Well, again, welcome, Bill. Thanks for being here. And this usually goes pretty quickly. We do have some questions, and we'll give you both we'll give you both an opportunity to just introduce yourselves, have kind of an opening statement, and each of you will have 3 minutes for just an opening statement. And we'll start with Katie, and then we'll work our way to Armando and Barton. And one thing we'll do too is we'll go in reverse order. So we're starting with Katie on this one, and then each question will rotate, and we'll do like a snake, right? So we'll go Armando, Barton, back. So each of you will have a chance to address the question first, and you will have a chance to also hear what everybody else said before you answer. So take it to you, and we have 3 minutes on this one.
I'm thanking you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm here because I'm truly excited about the possibility of joining this board and contributing to the amazing work that this board is already doing, bringing events to life in our community. So a little about me. I've lived here in Ladera with my husband and children for 15 years. I'm a mom of 3. I have a senior in high school, a junior in high school, and an 8th grader. So life is full, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Over the years, I've learned how to juggle schedules, navigate chaos with a smile, and bring people together, all of which I've come to realize are also great skills for planning and supporting events. But I've also done a lot of work in and out of our community. I've had the privilege of serving on several boards. I've always been drawn to roles that allow me to create space where people feel connected, heard, and give the opportunity for engagement. Whether it's been on the AYSO board in Ladera, Catholic softball boards, helping to run and coordinate school functions, run and coordinate PTA events, volunteering at local events, or just rolling up my sleeves to get the job done behind the scenes. I've always believed in the power of showing up, pitching in, and making things happen. And if anyone knows me, they know I get the job done. I've been running PTA boards for years, been on large carnivals and family-centered events, but within the various boards that I've been on, the board always revolves around its structure, composition, leadership, and how it interacts with management, stakeholders, and for LARCS with the community. I've had the opportunity to work on philanthropy boards, bringing together a community for a mission and support a cause through various events. Various service for site organizations is what I've been most passionate about. Most recently, I've been working with the Blind Children's Learning Center, a national charity league. I'm currently working with Long Beach State on the Fraternity and Housing Corporation. So I love working with a team. I'm passionate and dedicated to people. And I think my experience in community leadership and value on various boards can really be of value. So thank you for considering me. I'd love the chance to contribute, collaborate, and celebrate the incredible things we can accomplish together for this amazing community that we call home.
We first visited Ladera Ranch with my family in the spring of 2000. At the time, only Oakville was here available, and this was the sales office, Clubhouse sales. In this room, there was this giant 3D map of the vision that the developer had to grow Ladera Ranch south of Crown Valley Parkway. At the time, interest rates were about 8%, so there wasn't that fervor of people putting their name in an auction. So we had time to visit a couple of times. And in February of that year, we put a deposit down and we bought our house. It took till July until construction was finished. But at that time, we'd bring our kids over, we'd visit it, they'd get all excited, they'd play around over here in the Knoll fountains. We had a good sense that it's going to be home for us for a long time. And it's been 25 years, so of course it has been around for quite a while. At first, Ladera Ranch had community events that were very, very modest. They were held here in that grass area, and also that back grass area in the past. Just a few residents were here, a couple hundred. We got to know them pretty well. As Ladera grew, the events grew. They moved over to the town green, and I got to know some of the staff members at LARCS back then. There were only 2 people. And one day I was there and a woman asked, she's very pregnant, if I could help climb a chair and hang some banners. I got to chat with her, and my volunteer career in Ladera started that day. I've been volunteering literally for the past 23 years. I started and spent most of my time as a day event volunteer. I love it. It's really what I enjoy doing. At the time, there really wasn't a formal volunteer program. So the board members who were serving on the board at that time asked if I'd be interested in forming a formal volunteer program. It was a volunteer committee back then, and the board renamed it the Ranch Hands Committee. So I was one of the first official ranch hands here in Ladera when I being on that committee. At the time, the ranch hands and the event planning committee would meet every other meeting. And I got involved with planning the events, and my kids were very excited because they thought I was responsible for putting stuff on. We were very young at the time, we didn't know nothing. After years of working in various committees, I worked with the aesthetic review committee for a few years with Ken. I did the planning committee and the ranch hands committee. I wanted to learn more about the board operations. The board and I got along very well, and I put an application to be non-voting member. I thought that was the best way to get my feet wet, and I'm glad I started that way because there's a lot to learn to be on board. After sitting on a few meetings, one of the members left, and a vacancy was there to fill. It wasn't an election; it was an appointment, and the board graciously asked if I sit on it, and I've been on the board ever since. I was on the board during COVID. Saw a lot of challenges we had. We got through that. And I'd like to serve another term. We have some challenging times, I think, ahead of us with home sales, changing demographics. And if I have the opportunity, I'll certainly do my best to see it through that.
I apologize for not being there in person with all of you. My daughter is a sophomore at University in Nashville and selected this week for her move out. So I am down helping her a little bit last minute move out of her dorms. But my family and I moved to Ladera Ranch in 2010. So we're coming up on, we just passed 15 years. When we came to Ladera, my kids were 5 and 3. And their first memory of Ladera was at the spring celebration. We hadn't even closed on the house yet. We had the offer in, and that was really our family's first interaction with the Ladera community. And I was so impressed by the family-friendly community nature of Ladera, and it really helped reinforce that we made the right decision to move to this community. So I spent 4 years on the LARMAC board. So after we moved here, I joined the LARMAC board and helped the team thinking about the operational running of the community. A lot of the landscaping and the street paving and the concrete repair and all the things that go into keeping the community beautiful. And it was fun, but at the end of my term, I stepped off the LARMAC board, and in 2017 had the opportunity to join the LARCS board and have been working with LARCS ever since as we think about planning the community events, figuring out the right way to create engagement and foster that sense of excitement for the families of Ladera that we felt when we moved here back in 2010. A lot of my focus is on the finances and thinking about how do we build sustainability into the planning and the budgets that we do within the LARCS board. And so I think that's incredibly important. And as Armando said, we still have work to do as home sales are down. We need to make choices around how we manage that budget very responsibly while still providing the best programming possible. And so that's part of my focus over the last number of years and what I hope to continue offering on the LARCS board. Professionally, I work in IT, in a financial services company, and volunteer on a number of other boards and engage in the community. But at the end of the day, my passion and my heart is still with Ladera. And so I hope for the opportunity to serve another term on the LARCS board.
All right, so we'll jump into questions. Thank you all for the intro. You all received 2 predetermined questions. So we have a total of, well, today, just so you know, we have 11 questions. Questions go a little faster. We do about a minute per, right? So just kind of keeping the responses very succinct and a little bit shorter than in our intro. So we'll start with the 2 predetermined questions, the ones that were provided to the 3 of you via email. And we'll start with Katie, and we'll work our way through, and then we'll start that snake order. What contributions do you feel you can provide?
I do come with a wealth of experience with different boards. I'm currently working with the housing board. I run AYSO for 4 years. I didn't run it, but I was part of it for AYSO for 4 years here in Ladera. I've been on the Capital Softball Board for 4 years. It was majority Ladera Ranch residents then. I've been a neighborhood rep for 3 years. I ran 2 Girl Scout troops in the community. So I'm very invested in this community, and I've just been able to see and be in a lot of different environments outside of Ladera also. So I can see bringing in outside knowledge can be helpful. Obviously I live here and I've been to all of our events over the years. So I really feel I'm going to come into this with a lot of wealth of information to be able to really explore and help support and expand all the great work that's happening.
One thing I learned, if you want to be an effective LARCS board member, you need to be solely focused on residents and their experience at our events. Residents in the events is really what brings the memories that we're trying to create. We have some great programs, but everyone talks about all of the events. I'm not serving on the board that had a professional resume, so I can put board member on there. I'm retired, so resumes really aren't part of my life anymore. I don't sell houses and want to tell people I want to be a board member because I can get more clients. I love this community. I've lived here 25 years. I raised my kids here. I've been volunteering many hours. I was awarded the Spirit of Community Service Award for hours in 2013, and I received it again last year. And I'm really proud of that because I think it recognizes the amount of time I've put in here. Professionally, I used to be a senior traffic engineering analyst. I spent over 30 years analyzing data, managing projects, presenting findings to city councils, PTAs, public interest groups, business groups. I bring the same skill set to LARCS. I review the budget every month. I look at all the events. We have resident surveys that come in. I'm the guy that reads all the surveys, good and bad, and try to figure the next meeting what we need to talk about to make our events a little bit better. If a resident's going to take the time to fill out a survey, I'm going to read that survey. When I volunteer at the events, I make a point to talk to all the residents that I can to see how they're enjoying the events. I unload boxes from Go Green event to talk to people in the cars as they're driving by, just to see what they think about the events. There's always room for improvement. There's always trying to make the event a little bit better. I think people have a great experience and then they're going to recognize the merit for that. So what I can contribute is my 20 years of experience, my dedicated commitment, and the ability to make memories for our residents.
Sure. I think there's a couple things I can bring to the LARCS board or continue bringing to the LARCS board. One is we go to all the events and we participate, and we started when the kids were young by going to the events as participants. Now we go as volunteers, and I look for ways to help out, to bring more people to the events, to spread the word, because I think the events are such a powerful part of what make Ladera a special community. But behind the scenes, I think a big part of the board is making something that is actually quite complex to operate and execute seem very simple and easy for our residents. And so as a member of the board, I think a big part of what I bring is the operational support, the financial know-how, the logistics, and the commitment to making sure the board and the budgets and all the interactions with the staff run as smoothly as possible, because there are a lot of decisions that need to be made, and there's a lot of work that goes into producing these events and making them as exceptional and easy and fun as they are. And whether it's in my job or my other volunteer work on other boards, or my time working with the Ladera community, both with LARCS and LARMAC, I understand what's involved in delivering those events at the best quality possible with the right budget in a sustainable way, so that 20 years from now, we still have the ability to deliver amazing programming. And I think I can bring that perspective and all those years of experience, both professionally and in the LARCS and LARMAC board service, forward to help continue to give back to the community.
What is your vision for Ladera community in the next 3 to 5 years?
A few months ago, LARCS and LARMAC got together and we put out a community-wide survey. It was open for about a month and a half, and it received a little over 300 responses for each survey. 300 is really good for the range. People don't really participate. 100 is good, 300 is very good. We have 8,000 homes. It doesn't sound like it's good, but we got some good feedback. The survey results gave LARCS a lot, I believe, real good information, and we just started touching on it during our last meeting. The residents told us that their most popular events, the favorite events, are the 4th of July, summer concerts, and the farmers market. Coincidentally, not so much. The top 2 events are our most expensive events, but we get more bang for our buck at those events. They just draw thousands of people. The farmers market's cost neutral, so that's going to maintain status quo. A point that the residents made, what they want to see is that the demographics are changing, something I touched on a little earlier. A lot of people have gray hair like I do. Our kids are either in college, graduated college, or moved away. They said they would like to see more adult events, adult focused events. Some of the ideas were a wine tasting, craft beer tasting, speaker series, other things that speak more to adults and not necessarily the little kids. Not that we're gonna get rid of the little kid events, my kids are 29 and 31, they're not gonna be winning free Easter eggs, but they may join me for some beer tasting. A second point that was mentioned was more team offerings. We used to have this giant bubble of little kids that were flooding the Easter egg event. Now they've all become teens riding e-bikes. The respondents of the survey said if we had more things for them to do, perhaps it'd be a little more productive. We have a TLC, Team Leadership Council. They put on a couple of events a year. They're very successful. They sold out. The board, I believe, should reach out to them to see if we can have more events or increase the capacity of those events so we can engage more teams to be more productive. And the final point I want to make, the residents had, and I know we're out of time, but the meeting is safety. Safety. The residents want to come to the events, they want to feel safe. I've lived here for 25 years, and for 22 of those years, we had a 4th of July without any major incidents. 2 years ago, that changed. I was on the board and I take responsibility for that, but we had a group of e-bikers that terrorized the attending of the 4th of July. They were throwing fireworks at people got injured, it was a mess. The very next day, I was sending an email to Ashley and other board members. We met 2 days later, we met with the event planning committee, we met with staff met with the supervisor's office, with the sheriff's office, and we came up with a plan for last year's event. We made quite a bit of changes. The big one was no e-bikes in the zone. And I'm happy to say we didn't have any notable events that occurred. We didn't have one young man on an e-bike team. He was detained from the sheriff's. His backpack was searched. He did have firearms. He was taken to Avondale, which is their command center. His parents were called, and the sheriff's department gets very tight-lipped when it comes to minors, but we were assured it was addressed appropriately. So for the next 3 to 5 years, I want to listen to the residents' goals they want. We want to have adult events, we want to have more teen events, we want to maintain our current events, we want to focus on safety. For me, I think safety was a big wake-up call 2 years ago, and as long as I'm on the board, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that doesn't happen.
I think as we look out 3 to 5 years, we're, as Armando said, an interesting crossroads, right? Our intake of funds from home sales is down, our costs are up, but the traditions and the events that we put on are so important to the families. If I look at that survey Armando referenced, one of the things people talk about is the traditions and the familiarity with the events, and the kids looking forward to summer concert series or harvest festival or spring festival. So I think, as a board member, we have both a challenge and a responsibility to deliver those events and continue building on those traditions, but not let them get stale. To think about ways that we can do something a little different or bring a new event. And to the point Armando made, we have to take safety into account now. Things have changed, and I think we've tried to incorporate that into the larger gatherings. But I think the idea of continuing to keep the events fresh and to find ways to extend and expand while preserving the traditions and the things that families look forward to year after year as the kids grow up is really critical. As I said, I have one in college, and I have a high school senior who's going to be going off to college in the fall. And one of the things I've seen them really enjoy is the growth and being able to go from a young participant getting eggs in the egg roll to volunteering and helping with the egg roll. So finding ways to get the families involved and to get the teens involved in the community to help make those events run more smoothly, I think is a huge opportunity for the board, and something I hope to continue doing, all within the bounds of fiscal responsibility, which is something you'll hear me say over and over again, because again, I believe a big part of our responsibility is not just to deliver great programming, but to make sure it's sustainable year over year.
Yes, as Linda said, I am in that probably the majority now, but we've got the aging kids and we're in that demographic that we have a lot of residents who've been here for 10 plus years. And so how do we get them to stay engaged? How do we get them to not think outside of the era now, because their kids are older, they have kiddos that don't want to go to an egg hunt, but we still have to have those important events because we do still have the cute little kiddos in our community that we do need to still keep those traditions, like Barton said. So looking at those ways to really continue to build community, to build engagement. We have so much around us in this world that's trying to divide us. We still need to think of ways to bring people together. So because I feel maybe our events, as great as they are, maybe they could get refreshed a little bit. How do we look at those physical ways to add to these events, to make them more engaging and draw more community together? So that's really the focus. As we are getting these older populations, we don't want them to leave. I don't want to leave, but I do want to see things that will bring my group out, draw us out of our houses, draw us out of coming back to Ladera instead of looking elsewhere for fun events. I really like to have that focus, how we can draw a bigger demographic for everyone to be fulfilled in our events.
So in the spirit of community volunteers, please share your volunteer experience in Ladera Ranch, and please specifically call out any volunteer experience with LARMAC and or LARCS. And then as a second part to that, maybe add an element that in terms of how that has prepared you for this position, right? Whatever that experience is.
Sure. So I said it in my opening statement, but I'll repeat it. Almost 4 years on the LARMAC board, learning how to run the basics of the community, 7 years on the LARCS board, focusing on how we put on the events and volunteering at the events. I'm a volunteer at a lot of the LARCS events. You'll see me around. More broadly, kids were at OSO and LRMS, helped run the robotics team when the kids were there. I was involved in a lot of the activities when we did the Watchdog program, continued to help run a robotics club and be one of the parent chaperones when they were at LRMS, volunteered and have been at a wide range of activities through the years. So we try to stay involved. The family's done AYSO. We help now with the lacrosse teams at the high school, which is a lot of Ladera families. My wife ran a Girl Scout troop for 12 years. And I think just we look for ways to stay connected in the community. And I think it's critical to create those volunteer opportunities as a family. So I think the thing I'd add is my daughter is on TLC. My younger daughter is involved in the church and in the community, like building that mentality, that framework of service into not just us as board members, but into the families and having them drive that, spirit of volunteerism is a big part of what I think we try to do through LARCS, and something I've done in my 15 years here in Ladera.
Sure. My background with Ladera specifically was on the AYSO board for about 4 years. I was on the Catholic softball board, volunteering there for 4 years. I did neighborhood representative for 3 years, and I ran 2 Girl Scout troops where we attended events. We were the first float in the 4th of July parade years ago and won because it wasn't really anybody going in. So
Still counts.
yeah, so just the community involvement just has always been to just show up and help wherever I can. And those are the main areas that I've been involved over the years. And I've never been on LARCS, and that's where I'm in a point of life now that I'd like to get involved again. My kiddos are older. So now coming into the LARCS community, I think would be a great fit, as I just love the events and just want to continue to make Ladera Ranch great for everybody.
I've touched on it quite a bit. Just want to summarize. I started in 2003 and I haven't stopped.
It's a good way to summarize. LARCS holds several service contracts with large vendors to provide carnival rides, activities, programming on large scale events. What would your strategy be for evaluating vendor performance as a board member?
So as you all have done a survey, those are always a great way to find out if internally and of course through the community, but internally to making sure everything was met, the objectives were made, they came through with what they were going to say they provided for us is a first way to vet a vendor, but obviously just making sure they have all the right permits and they're going to execute what we're asking, and then of course post making sure everything's done appropriately, and then we can decide obviously later if we will use them again.
I use 2 ways to measure it. The LARCS board with Ashley as a help has developed a scorecard. That scorecard is more from the staff and the board perspective. Did they show up on time? Did they come in at budget? Were they dressed appropriately? Did do what they say what they're gonna do? Did they bring the equipment? Were they able to handle problems? And we score those vendors, so when it's the next time to give them a contract, we determine, we look at the scorecard and see how we should evaluate that. The second way is resident surveys, as Katie touched on. The resident experience to me is the most important part. Of course, vendors are gonna show up, we're paying a lot of money to show up at our events. But if the residents aren't experiencing a great time at our events, then we probably failed with it. And if it was the vendor's responsibility, if they fell short, then we need to talk to the vendor to make sure that's not gonna happen again. We've done that with vendors. I don't know if you came to the spring celebration, the James event, folks are now wearing these little nice polos to identify themselves. Before they weren't dressed, what we feel would be more professional. It's those little things that we wanna do just to elevate our events and make sure the residents have the best experience in here.
Sure. I mean, Armando touched on it as well, but we do a scorecarding process. We implemented it years ago. I think we continue to look for ways to enhance the ways we evaluate the vendors. So we look at objective points as submitted by the staff. I think as a board member who's at a lot of the events, I get to experience it firsthand. And not everything's going to go perfect. I remember at the summer concert a couple of years ago, we had a generator problem. You know, I saw the report from the staff, but I also saw the owner of the company show up in 40 minutes and do everything he possibly could to help restore the service. Those types of vendors and those types of partners are the groups we want to work with at Ladera and in LARCS, even when they have problems. So I think there's the things we assess as a board as part of each event, and we do competitively bid work. We do look for ways to bring different vendors in, make sure we're getting the right price. But then I also look for ways to subjectively evaluate how the vendor works with us at the event, how they show up when there are problems, how do they engage with us, do they really work like a partner? And where we have issues, we take action to correct it. But I will add, I think the vendors that we have that have worked with us through the years in Ladera do an excellent job, and I think a lot of that is because of the partnership that exists and the community environment and the partnership that Ladera brings in working with those vendors. So it's an important part of creating the right atmosphere at the events.
Paint the picture here, right? So home sales have been down, as everybody knows, just the volume of homes. That has caused LARCS to not have the same steady flow of revenue coming in from those CEX on those resales. And so with that, with all things considered, knowing that we've also facing rising costs and things like that, how do you idea strategies for continuing to manage that, maintain that, while still meeting the community's needs?
I think it's an important question. I don't know if it was submitted or staff came up with it. LARCS and LARMAC operate separately. We have two separate corporations. We have two separate funding sources. LARMAC is paid by our HOA dues that are paid every month on time.
Sometimes, most of the time.
So they know every year how much they're going to get and what their budget's going to be. LARMAC doesn't work like that. We receive 0 HOA dollars. We receive 0.25% for every time a home is sold. Some months, a lot of homes are sold, other months, not so much. A couple of weeks ago, excuse me, I was at 10 Mile Brewery meeting with the TAC chairman. And I ran into a real estate woman I know from the gym. And she said on that day, 32 houses were on the market. 2 months prior, 13 houses were on the market. That is a low inventory. How does that translate into finances, to answer your question? We have a projected budget that we make based on historical home sales. We know every year home sales go up, they go down, but we have a 3-year average of all those home sales. Our 3-year projected revenue that we thought we were getting this year is going to be about $300,000 short of what we thought it was going to be. Sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. 4th of July costs us $275,000 roughly budgeted. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Does that mean this year we're going to cancel 4th of July? Of course not. We're going to do that. Where are we going to get the money? Big sale? No, we're not going to do that either. We have good years where we receive more money than we think we're going to get. That money gets put in the reserve. Look, the past 4 years, the market's been very well, and we've had some pretty good returns. So we will pull from the reserves to make sure that we can fulfill our obligations. However, being responsible board members, we should not live on reserves. That is not a way to do this long term. If we could fill in, we're going to have a hard look at our events to see where we can trim costs. Could we have more cost neutral events? What's a cost neutral event? Well, we have workshops that we have, and residents will pay $30-40 to get in, and it costs about $42 a person. So we spend very little. Easter, on the other hand, is about $60,000 event. Wristbands bring in about $7,000. We lose a lot of money Easter. Can we trim Easter? Have fewer eggs, a booth or two less than what we've had in the past? You know, these are questions that we're going to work with the event planning committee. The event planning committee plans events. The board member is going to look at strict budgets, and when necessary, we can look at reserves. But as I said, I don't think reserves are really a long-term sustainable. We've had great events for 25 years, and I feel obligated to make sure events continue for 25 years, however they look. When I first moved here, we had modest events, and we had a great time. We have grand events now, and we have a great time. If we meet somewhere in the middle, I think we'll be fine.
Well, I would say the rising inflation and the low home sales and the rising cost environment is incredibly complicated. And I think it'll be a topic the board continues to work through for several years. You know, as Armando said, we have a reserve fund that was established through all the original home sales in Ladera. And if you look at that reserve fund from 2008 to 2025, that fund on an inflation adjusted basis is about the same amount of money, meaning we are making sure to protect that reserve fund. And we've made strategic investments when the markets were strong. We moved into some fixed income products that allow us to protect those investments and generate revenue streams that help supplement the CEFs in the bad years. But I'm incredibly focused on not dipping into that reserve more than 1 year in a row and thinking about how do we adjust our funding to live within our means. Unlike LARMAC, we cannot raise the dues. We cannot charge more per home sale. The amount of money we have and the formulas that calculate how much we get from a home sale are the only way we can raise money. Nobody wants to pay $50 for a wristband to go to spring celebration. So we have to keep our events affordable. We have to find the right balance for how we use the money we have. And sometimes that's going to mean tougher choices. The surveys that come after events will tell us if the event is well attended. For every event, we calculate a per attendee cost. And I think we have a tremendous amount of scrutiny on events that have higher per attendee cost. Adult events fall into that bucket. And as valuable and critical as I think they are, adult events cost more to put on. And so we have to think about how we strike that balance, because a $3 per attendee spring celebration takes a very different shape than a $30 or $40 per attendee adult event. And this will be the tug of war we have within the board for the next couple of years. And I, like everybody, hope that home sales go back up and resales go back up and some of this fades away, but inflation and the rising costs aren't going away. So this will be something the board has to focus on. And I think if we get it right, the community doesn't ever notice that we're doing all this behind the scenes, because the events will still be extraordinary. The programming will continue to evolve, and we will continue to protect that reserve on an inflation adjusted basis for a lot of years to come, because we need it from time to time when the markets are strange to make sure we don't have to disrupt our programming.
Thank you. I appreciate your responses, just kind of learning how this board is run, because yes, on every well-run board, it is the responsibility to understand the budget, what we're working within, where those monies come from, and where I'm not as obviously privy to all the information on how you are getting your vendors. Do we have multiple bids going out? Are we line iteming every single thing to find those areas that we can look at to see if it's necessary? Maybe we get 3 other bids, see what the best bang for our buck is. So I think just being responsible as the board member to understand that budget, to understand who we're using. I think sometimes we get in a rut and just keep using the same vendors. Well, have we tried others? Do we know? I think it'll be good to have more transparency so we can kind of see and look at where monies are coming from, so we can make sure we're using it properly and we can get the best community event for what we're trying to spend the residents' money on. So I just think we will look at that, and we need to look at that a little closer, as yes, inflation is here, there's things that have been rising, and yes, the slower home sales are a huge impact. But I'm glad to hear that we have reserves. I'm glad to hear that things have been responsibly done over the years. I just hope we can continue that and make sure we're still doing that in a good way.
So LARCS manages and has the oversight of the community website, ladera.life.com. What goals do you have to continue to improve the website and encourage interaction with residents?
Well, when I joined, the website was the only way to have interactions with residents, that and stopping by Avondale. I think through the years, hopefully folks have noticed more social media outreach, more email blasts, more ways to tie all the different connection points together. I think Ladera Life is a great resource to buy a wristband and look up the color palette that might exist for your home. There have been some new features that have been added recently that I think are a big win for residents. Um, but I think the world's changed, and I don't think the website's the only way we need to engage. So I remember when we started the Ladera Happenings Blast in partnership with the LARMAC board. I think those types of outreach flyers are more timely. They draw people in. We always see people come back to the website after we do a targeted update or a communication or an event announcement. We started doing more and more on social media, and I think that's really critical. That's how a lot of people are getting their current information. We started trying QR codes, and it's something that came up in a board strategy session. How do we get more real-time feedback? Are there ways we can do that through social media? So I think the website's an important anchor to help, but I don't think the website's the only tool. And as a board member, I want to see us continue to lean into some of these other channels, because really the goal is to have the right engagement with the residents, get them the right information at the right time, and continue keeping them updated on what's going on. And so Ladera Life's an anchor of that, but social media, Ladera Happenings, and I think other things that we're talking about will play a big role as well.
Yeah, this is probably a big point for me. I think the marketing piece to LARCS needs to be improved, where yes, the website is great, that it gives a lot of great information, but there's not enough touches. That's how you build engagement. That's how we're going to connect with the majority of our community. They all are on their devices. They're all on social media. We need to engage more that way to really draw and build more into our community events. With the digital world, we absolutely need more on social media. That's really going to help support it, and sooner. I think even talking to my neighbors, like, oh, that event, I think I just saw that it's coming up. I wish I would have known. I just think we need to get out more touches and more ways to really engage our residents a little sooner and a lot more touches.
I think the website, as Barton noted, is pretty functional. I don't think a lot of people are going there. There's other ways of getting information, as was already discussed. There's Facebook, Instagram, the Teen Leadership Council runs, I think they started TikTok recently, they're trying to start it. They do with stats and divisions, so it's not, we're not gonna grow over feral out there. They're being monitored, with our stuff and what they do with their own stuff. To improve the website means more money. We talked about resources that are limited in the next few years. I'm not one that's really going to go to throw more money to make the website prettier. There are free ways to do it through Facebook, through Instagram, wherever people are going to be next platform. And if staff can work with those platforms to engage more, Ladera Happenings doesn't really cost us much. We can pay for a small service for the mailing list. David, when he was here, started that. Great job. And I think we should focus on those for engaging with residents. I do not want to spend a lot more money on this.
How would you engage the community to best determine the need? What the needs of the community are? And then how would you incorporate that resident feedback into decisions regarding community events?
I think there was a survey that was put out, and I think that is a mass way of being able to connect with the community. It's a survey. I think we've done all the social networks in terms of Facebook and Instagram. That is another way to engage community. So both those ways, I think, are going to be the most popular and the biggest way to really get residents kind of reaching out to us and exploring ways to kind of improve or what they're wanting to see more of. So that's, yeah, surveys and social media.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we had a survey with pretty good results. It was very successful. I don't think we want to hit residents every month with a big survey because they're just not going to fill that out. We do surveys after every event. If you look on social media today, there was a nice video that Josh put together. I saw him earlier, Josh. And on that tag was fill out a survey. If we just let people know there's a survey available, fill it out, they'll let us know what they want. The surveys aren't always complimentary, and we appreciate the critical, constructive criticism, as they call it. If we can improve on it, the residents will let us know how we can improve on it. And social media, as we already discussed in the last question, another great opportunity.
I mean, I think surveys are valuable, although as Armando shared earlier, people don't fill them out. 350 responses and 7,000 residents is a start, and it's critical feedback, but it's really hard to get people to give us that feedback in real time. So as I shared, we're thinking about how we do QR codes. How do you do after event blasts where maybe people have an opportunity to give you something more real time? But what I found one of the best ways to get feedback is to be at the events, to wear the board member shirt, to walk around with the badge, because people will come up to you and they will tell you what they think. And sometimes it is amazing and they want to share a story about the experience their child had for the very first time with the Easter Bunny. And sometimes it's a frustration because something isn't working out. And I think being present and being a volunteer and being out in the community, whether it's at the events or walking the dog and people kind of know you and they stop you with feedback, is so important to supplement whatever we get from the surveys and the feedbacks and the phone ins and everything else, because it helps us know what's really going on. And so I think all of those have to come together. And, as board members and as community residents, we have a sense of what's working and what's not. So it's kind of speaking up when something doesn't seem right. Armando mentioned the 4th of July issues a couple years ago. It was very obvious there was a problem, and the board took decisive action. I think that type of feedback loop is incredibly valuable, and we just have to be as creative as possible to get the input to help us make decisions because we're here to represent the community.
What is one change or improvement you'd like to lead or be a part of in your tenure on the board?
I don't think the decision is mine. I think it's already been made with the low inventory of homes. Is we are not going to have the money that we've had in the past, at least with the current housing market. It might change this spring. It might change 5 years from now. One thing I really do, and I know I'm speaking for Barton as well, he's our finance guy, our CFO, is we're gonna have to watch the budget and really be critical with every single dollar that gets spent during the next fiscal year. Ladera needs to have these events 25 years from now. We're irresponsible today. They're not gonna be able to catch up for the mistakes we're making today. We need to be responsible and spend what we bring in. We have reserves when we need it, but we should not rely on it. So mine would be finance.
Well, mine's probably finance too. I think it's a huge part of what we need to do, but it's the balance of how do we preserve that budget for the future and still provide incredible events. We go to events in other communities to see what other groups are doing. And I think the programming we do in Ladera is really outstanding, particularly within the budget framework we do it in. And so I think striking that balance is really important, and figuring out how do we make some of that complexity a little more transparent to those who want to get involved. We're always looking for volunteers on EPC to help us with the volunteer planning and ranch hands as we're getting people out into the events. And at least for me, I found it's harder and harder to get people kind of engaged in helping run the community. The last couple of years have been really interesting, and I think more and more, once we get the budget right, how do we get the community activated and engaged and wanting to volunteer? Because it only works if everybody is out there volunteering. We couldn't possibly pay for the staff to do every single role that needs to be done at these events. We've got to keep the community engaged and wanting to help volunteer to create the environment we have.
Being fiscally responsible, that is obviously the number one thing. I do feel the events, there's always room for improvement. I think, again, with our aging demographics, trying to really engage the community into events that they want to attend. What does that look like? I don't know. I'm excited to kind of dive in, to be on this board, to kind of give some knowledge on how you can find avenues to cut costs and still really have a fun and successful event. There are ways to maybe combine different parts of events that can get the little ones involved as well as the older ones involved. It doesn't have to be an event that's solely just for one demographic. How do we find ways to bring in the other demographics as well? So what does that look like? How we try to, again, find the ways in the budget, but trying to find ways to freshen up these events to get more folks wanting to come and make sure they stay in Ladera to come to our events is kind of a key that I'd like to focus on, just to make sure we're still giving those great events we've been so well known for so many years, but how do we keep up and still keep these events lively for years to come?
And we have a question, just, I'll preface this by saying, does everybody, all three of you know the Taste of Ladera? Does everybody, right? That has been thrown around a lot over the years. I wasn't here at the time, but I've heard it. And that was a big event. It seemed like it was a popular event, but it was not brought back. And so the question is, would you like to see an event like that come back to Ladera? Or an event similar to that outside of what our typical events are.
I love the idea. As a board, we've talked about it. I think the logistics and implementation are quite difficult. And some of the reasons it's difficult, budget is certainly one, although there are ways to partner with people. I think safety is another. I think as the world has evolved, it's very difficult to create events like Taste of Ladera that have a tendency to draw a demographic beyond Ladera's borders into the event and still create the right environment. We don't have a ton of parking. The e-bikes create interesting problems at the events. Doing them at founders over multiple days are logistically difficult and expensive. And so I think the idea is extraordinary and could be a lot of fun. Figuring out how we do that and how we meet the financial targets and how we do it in a way that is safe and still viable to deliver is hard. And as a board, we've talked about it a couple different times. I don't think we found the right pattern that works. I think I've always been open to it, whether it's a partnership with Westar or some of the commercial spaces where maybe we have more parking and other things. You know, we've looked at getting the city or the Orange County areas to let us close some streets up in the commercial areas. All of those are a lot harder to do than it sounds like it should be. So I like the idea. I don't know if I've seen or come up with the right recipe for how to deliver it. So I think we have to keep working at it.
I was around for the Taste of Ladera. I think ultimately Ladera needs its own event. You look at other cities, everyone has like their signature thing. So we have our 4th of July, yes. But I really feel that if we could bring back another event that could be our own, would be really appealing. I think another thing for our residents to look forward to that's ours would be really fun. What that also looks like financially, I don't know how we tap into local businesses. How are we looking at ways that getting sponsorships? I don't know, I haven't been on the board yet, but there are ways to tap into businesses to come in and partner with us. I don't know if we looked at that, possibly, I don't know, but definitely trying to find an event that is our own, I think would be great. And I would love to bring something back that not necessarily all the things that take over there, but whether that's a carnival, whether that's a good 2-day festival, whatever that looks like, I do think Ladera needs to have something. If we can support it financially, I don't know, but I would love to look into ways to partner with others that can support it financially.
Taste of Ladera was a community partnership event. LARCS did not put that event on. A woman who used to be a board member, or she was a board member, she dropped out, started an event planning company on her own. She approached the board back then and brought Taste of Ladera. In the first year, she just lost a ton of money. Second and third year, it became more profitable. However, in order for it to be sustainable and profitable, it had to be a multi-day event. Start Friday night, go all day Saturday, go all day Sunday. And it had to draw people outside of Ladera into the event. The last year that Taste of Ladera was here, we had more complaints than we've ever had since. A lot of outside people parking in crazy areas, a lot of people overserved, and it just went away. In 2015, she came back and talked to the board about reviving Taste of Ladera. We were in negotiations, maybe we cut it down to a 2-day event. She said, not so much, probably has to be a 3-day event. Very sad, beautiful woman. She got sick and passed away. So the person who used to do Taste of Ladera will not be coming back to do it. If there is an outside community partner who wants to risk the significant financial resources to put a taste of Ladera on, I'm all for it. I do not want to spend $500,000 of our money to put it on, just because it sounds fun.
What would you say is your description or the primary functions of a role of a LARCS board?
It's to build engagement, to build community, to create events and help facilitate those ways that the community can come together through all the events that are put on, through the smaller events, any type of event that's just gonna draw community is where I feel the LARCS member is really the focus of ways that everyone can feel that they belong and can come together.
For me, it's to make memories. My kids grew up here. They were 7, 5, and 5. They're 31, 29, and 29. And they still talk about the events. One of the things they mentioned was one of the first movie nights we had was at the town green, and somebody forgot to turn the sprinklers off. And before the movie was over, the sprinklers came on and we talked about how they got was in their hands. And parents were as excited, kids loved it. We're not gonna plan those type of events, but it's those type of memories. You know, we all have nice houses, we drive cool cars and have nice things. Those things have to be replaced. You know, your kids get older and they look back and they don't care about that stuff. They care about the time we'll spend together, the engagement we have, the friends that you go with. That type of stuff, they're gonna have forever. My eldest has a serious girlfriend now, and he's talked if he has kids, he'd like to bring them back to do the Easter roll or watch the 4th of July fireworks. Our responsibility is to continue these traditions that we've started.
I think as a volunteer in the community, our objective, our responsibility is to build engagement, build connection, help make the community a better place. I think as a board member, we have a fiduciary responsibility, and we are officers of a nonprofit entity that needs to be viable 25 years from now. And our job is to work through all the logistics and all the tough decisions and the insurance contracts and the retainers and the liability agreements and all of that, so that the community doesn't have to think about any of that and can go to great events. And what I've learned in 4 years on LARMAC and 7 years on LARCS is a lot of the work we do is actually behind the scenes, making this stuff run smoothly so the community has a great experience, and we're spending the community's money in the most effective way possible. It isn't always glamorous, but it's the work that needs to happen. And anybody who's been on a volunteer board, whether it's one of the Ladera boards or it's AYSO or whatever it is, knows that stuff that happens behind the scenes is really, in my opinion, the core responsibility of a board member. And when we get it right, the community has those great experiences and doesn't have to think about all that other administrative stuff that is the accountability and responsibility of the board. What
is your primary objective for wanting to serve on?
I've mentioned it a few times. I'm not going to hash it over again. We're on our 25th anniversary of great memories. A lot of families have come through, and my objective is to make sure 25 years from now, somebody will be sitting at this table and talking about the previous 25 years. As part of said, we're responsible to make sure the legacy of Ladera Ranch will continue well after we're done.
Ditto. I think, I really view the role, my role on the board, and the reason I want to serve is because Ladera has been so good to our family. We want to give back for as long as the community is willing to have us serve. And I think over 10 years, I've got a lot of experience that can help as we come into these trying times. And for as long as I can help, I want to be a part of giving back to the community that's given us so much.
The reason I moved here 15 years ago, and it's still the same reason I'm here today. I love this community. I love it, all it provides for my kids, for my family, the friendships, the memories. I want to keep that sustained for as long as possible. I know I'm going to be here for quite a few more years, and I just want to keep it going as best as I can see that it can be. And I just want to provide and jump in where I can and be a part of a growing community that's just still thriving and keep it going that way.
Because we just brought up the taste of Ladera, and a lot of the problems that come from that was because the person that was running that had a conflict of interest with Ladera. So Does any of you have a Ladera-based business that could be a conflict of interest in any of the LARCS businesses or our community partnerships?
Barton, you're up.
I do not.
I have a Ladera-based business, I'm a small business owner. But no, the answer is no, it can't be a conflict of interest.
No, I'm happy to retire.
Thank you, Armando. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Barton. Thank you very much for being here this evening. Thank you to everyone again for taking time out of your evening to be here. We look forward to seeing all the neighborhood representatives at the LARCS selection meeting. That will be on Wednesday, June 4th at 7 p.m. Just a friendly reminder, is it a mandatory meeting for neighborhood representatives?